So the man of the moment, supposedly changing the game, is Bryson DeChambeau. He is hitting the ball astronomical distances, as we saw winning of the week, averaging way over 350 throughout the week, which is absolutely outrageous. Now, what is it that he's doing to achieve all of this? So in lockdown, he did change his physique. You could see he put a lot of size on, massive difference in the guy from sort of 12 months ago. But also there's some quite big changes in his technique. It's no longer this sort of one plane, almost semi-wooden looking action. It's so much more dynamic now. So he's done work with his two coaches, which are Mike Shai and Chris Como, to change the action. Let's have a look at what's changed within the action, as well as the body that's been able to support this new speed. And then what we'll do is we'll dive outside and have a look at what you can apply to allow you to start to put this into your game. So first of all, having a look here, we can obviously see a massive difference in the physique here on the left to the right. Now this swing on the right hand side isn't one of the more original wooden looking ones, but it is now. So what we'll do is we're going to go through the changes throughout the years. Obviously he is known as the scientist, so he is changing things all the time and working at his game. Now setup wise, you can just see a little wider in the feet, but only probably proportionally wider relative to how big his shoulders are. He's absolutely massive now compared to the size on the right hand side. Now you see the more original one here on the right hand side as he's going back. There's way less dynamic in this movement, so he's not really pushing down and away with the legs. It's much more of just a solid one-piece turn away with the body. What we see here on the left-hand side is that he starts to actually push down into the front of this left leg a little bit just as he's about to start. So watch how that left leg, watch how it just twitches now and contracts into the muscle. Then what he does is he moves away. So he's using that as a counter move to push away. So pushing in and then out. So then we can see there's already load going through the golf shaft at this point. Now, yes, it's going to be exaggerated a little bit from the camera, but there is a load going through it. Now, as what we'll see here is, if we have a look at the angle between the left arm and the shaft, it's almost identical, but there's just more speed to the movement, particularly in the hips. Now, as we keep going towards that top of the back swing, this is when we see the difference. So we see how much load there is now when he's completed the rotation. So he's completing that stretch phase very, very differently to how he did before. See a really similar sort of shoulder rotation, but completely different in where the wrists have set the club. Now if we have a look here at one that is a slightly more recent swing than the one in the flat cap, and we'll still see not got that sort of counter move to start it away, which is getting the speed, and then as we get to the top here, still not up there anywhere near the same level of wrist set at the top. Completely different here. Now here's where it starts to get quite different. And what he does is he starts to be able to really push back towards the target. Let the left heel come up in the air a little bit more, and now he's really starting to push down and through the front of that left foot. So he's pushing down in this direction and also maintaining a lot of pressure down in that right heel. What we'll see here is much more of an unwind, a lot more of a squat look through the legs here. So we've got it here, left arm back to parallel to the floor. Massive difference where the shaft is positioned. So here it is now, and here's where it was before. So we can see massive difference how much angle been retained in the wrist. Now the angle being retained in the wrist is due to the dynamic from the lower body. So because he's sequencing so much better from the ground up, he then starts to extend that left leg, which is pushing him backwards just a little bit, and then he's exploding through. Now everyone starts talking about how that left foot's jumping about. If we have a look at it, he's actually still very stable on that left foot. At this point now, that left foot's not moved anywhere, and that golf shaft's back to parallel to the floor. It's only now as he's using the power he's put into the floor that it starts to jump. So that's the energy returning from the ground. So he's pushing down and forwards in this direction on the foot. So what this is then doing is, this is pushing him back in this direction, and then as the pelvis is rotating, so it's rotating more around, then what we see is that it jumps the foot backwards now as the rotation takes place, and he jumps into the heel. So it actually looks really unbalanced at the end, but when we see it into when it actually mattered at impact, it looked completely orthodox to here. And that's just the powers jumping the ankle around. Have a look at the previous one, and we'll see now he's actually a little bit more over the outside of the front foot. Impact here, the left leg's nowhere near as straight, so he's not actually using the vertical forces out the ground as much. And then at the end, still a bit rolled over, but nothing like as unbalanced as this one looked, but it's just because of the power that he's throwing back out the ground. Now, let's take a look at this from down the line. So we look at the older one here on the right hand side, and again, first move back, pretty solid there. It's normal first move that we expect to see from Bryson. Obviously, bigger looking Bryson here on the left hand side, and we see, here's the interesting bit, we see how the push in, so you see how the left leg starts to push back, and he's actually pushing in, which throws the speed into the hips, and the arms really get an acceleration from the body rotating. So as he's jumping back now the hips turn and the left heel gets off the ground, okay, and that's all part of the extra rotation that he's getting. We take this one to the top, and we see that there is much less set in the club. Similar orientation of the golf shaft, but we get this to that top of the backswing here. That's when the club's finished moving now in the top there. And we see a completely different look, more rotation, but here's where he's getting a lot of power. He starts to use this movement from the lower body moving back towards the target now, while the club's still loading in, and the shoulders are staying still, so he's separating absolutely unbelievably. And now what we see here is the bit we see from the front view where that left leg really starts to jump back. At this point now, if anything, he looks a little bit sat on the right leg from here, but we saw from the front view he definitely isn't. We see here there's way less separation, it's all moving much more together as one unit. And as we get to impact here, we're seeing very different look again, so much more energy coming back out the ground here. But as a static position, not that different, maybe just a little bit more in the shot on the left hand side. As it comes through here, got that same rotation look, still got that same rotated look, but now obviously here's where we see that jump from the left foot. So we see how much that left foot on the left hand side in the new one, watch where it goes and how it's jumping back across the ground. So if we actually just zoom into this a little bit here from the feet, okay, watch what that left foot is doing. Let's get in the middle of the screen for you, and you're going to see now how when he's coming in, how once it starts to jump now, that's just the energy jumping back as that body's opening up, but it hasn't done it when we've got to impact here. That's really, really normal. We're not seeing anything different. Over the outside of the left, very slightly, instep of the right rolling in, and then the body opening up jumps that weight back. So, having a look at things there, loads of interesting bits, but a lot of it's starting to come from the dynamics in the swing and the fact that he's now separating and loading the club so much better. Let's have a look at what you can apply to your game outside to help you get a little bit more distance. So having a look at Bryson's game there, what is it that we can take from it that's really going to allow you to get some more power? Well, there's going to be two key bits. What we see there is he's now got an unrestricted turn, so he's letting that left heel come up in the air, a little bit going back, which is allowing him to complete that shoulder turn. And then from here, he starts down with that lower body, creates that counter rotation move from sort of below the bottom part of the rib cage and from the hips, and then that shoulders and the club are the last thing to move, and he starts to get that feeling of how he's going to be able to start that downswing from the ground up, and then that'll transfer the energy lastly into that club head. So the key for you to be able to practice this is going to be let that left heel come up and then feel that that left heel goes down as the club is still setting going back. So a little drill to do this would be start with the club past the hands here, so you're going to get the idea of how the club's going to flow to want to catch up. So you start off here, then you're going to go to the top, and then as it sets, get that feeling of the lower body starting down nice and early. So let's give it a little feel of how we can let that left heel start to lift up and then really get that lower body starting down nice and early. So the heel's going to be the key, because that's going to allow us to really complete that shoulder turn, get it back, and then get that lower body starting down first. So The key there is making sure that you can really let that club finish loading going back as that heel is lifting up. As you saw there, that wasn't a bad strike, and if you get the timing of this right with rehearsals and at home, get the feeling of the lower body starting down first while the club is lagging in or finishing its load going back, that is going to be absolutely huge. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video, guys. If you have, please subscribe to the channel. As always, thanks for watching and talk with you again soon.